Hey everyone, it's Dim and Kedge. Welcome back to Namaste Ridge, episode 15, if I am not mistaken. I genuinely think we have a magnificent episode in store for us today. One where we're going to talk about a property market update because I think that's quite relevant and hot and important right now. And I know that a lot of people who watch this are surely interested in that because probably people watching this show are looking to invest. So I think what will be really great is if we get into like what's happening currently in the property market. Number one, Kedge doesn't even know this, so God bless you, Kedge. Kedge might change this after I say this, right? Fine too, right? This is just Dim's cheeky proposal, but it's like um, number one, I thought we can get into currently what's going on in the market. Number two, maybe if unless Kedge wants to take it another way, like macro if we were to zoom out, like what are the macro principles and the non-negotiables and the foundations that we need to keep in mind no matter what, that can empower us regardless of the fluctuations. And then number three is it was Kedge's birthday last week. It was Kedge's birthday.
Well, just a tad closer to 40 than 30 now, so just crossed 35. So, but
And
yes,
I was gonna ask Kedge and maybe bounce together off life lessons. So
yeah,
that's how does that sound for you, man, Kedge?
sounds good, man. Sounds like a lot of content we're going to try and squeeze into 1 hour. So, yeah, that's we'll keep it on track. So, yes, I'll just jump straight in, man. Just talking property. There's been so much change over the last 4 to 6 weeks that there's you can probably do 4 to 5 episodes on it all, to be honest, and still not barely cover it. So I'll kind of try and keep it as high level and macro as possible, and then yeah, we can kind of go into niche stuff if we need to, and you might have questions that you might personally want to know, and yeah, we can do that in future episodes. So I think the two biggest things that have happened is like the budget, and then I guess all of it is kind of tied in with the budget, and then because it wasn't initially in the first part of the budget was the SMSF changes for property as well. So there was the initial budget announcements which had the removal of negative gearing for property investors, and the change in how capital gains tax gets calculated when you sell a property. So those were the two initial ones. Then later on, like very recently, then the government has now come out and said there is no longer, you can't borrow money to buy residential property in an SMSF any longer. So, and they've pretty much given a 45-day window. So give or take, contracts need to be signed before August, I think it's August 12th or 13th, but you obviously don't want to leave it that late to be eligible. And I think, so we can kind of break that up and talk about both. But I think the biggest thing that has kind of annoyed me about the second one mostly, because it's debatable, what's right and wrong and what's good for society, and I'm all that's okay. But with the SMSF thing, I think it's like the suddenness. It was never spoken about, came out of nowhere, and then it's like a 45-day window. And
Yeah.
these are people that would have been planning they're people that were transferring money, sacrificing into their super, planning their retirement, like putting that
And then
aside to go and
suddenly,
to go and do,
yeah,
and all of a sudden it's just like bang gone. So like once again, whether it's right or wrong for these changes to happen, that can be debated. But at least, particularly with the SMSF side of things, like a bit more notice and time for people, even if it was a 1 year notice, so people could figure their retirement plans out, would have been at least good. So I think that was the only thing that was really, yeah, it was a bit. I thought it was a bit left field, you know, to kind of come in that hard and that heavy.
would it be okay if we just start with like why, just genuinely, why do you think that happened, man?
So there's been, so once again, whether this is accurate or not, and I would argue that it's not fully accurate, but that there's been a growing message that the increasing house prices and how expensive things are getting is because of investors. So a lot of the younger population, like it's now getting harder and harder to buy a property to live in. You can be on a stable job, stable income. 30 years ago, you could probably buy a house to live in. Today, you can't. It's a lot harder too, I guess even using Sydney as an example. So there's been a lot of like sentiment against investors. So I don't actually think these changes actually solve that problem, but it's kind of appeasing to the voters that are out there, which are getting younger and younger, I guess, and a bit more left. So by kind of coming hard and heavy on the investors, it looks like you're doing something and making some sort of change. And but once again, happy for you to ask questions on what you think about that, or what my thoughts are on that as well, I guess.
Oh, well, I would love to hear your thoughts about that because ironically, you don't even I didn't get a chance to tell you, bro, but like I was listening to a buyer's agent that I also know other
Yep.
than you guys, and he's a bit more like conspiracy theory focused, I guess you could say. Having said that, like the guy's pretty he's pretty good. Like people think that he's conspiracy theory, but over time,
What's the theory?
but just like inflation, they're using inflation to um get away from the actual fundamental issues that are happening in terms of debt.
Yeah.
So it's really about um I didn't understand it fully, but I think it
Yeah.
was something to do with like protecting Australia's assets or keeping them ready for the US. It was like one part of it because the US is in trouble because of their debt issues. So it's something about it was something to do with like preserving a backup for the US and
Okay.
curbing and getting away from our own inflation and the debt crisis. It is something to do with debt. Like,
Okay.
I don't want to pretend like I know.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard that one, so that's interesting.
I'll send you
Send
the
me that
video.
offline. I'll be
Yeah,
keen to
yeah,
keen to have a look. But I think just for the sake of today, rather than getting up into whether it's right or wrong, or think, I guess more practically, I guess what people should be thinking, how people should be thinking about it. So I guess more useful for the time that we have today
for sure,
is
for
probably
sure.
good. So I guess there's probably some investors that are going to be early in their journey and looking to start their journey, and they're like, oh, what do we do now? And there's probably people that are, might be established, and what is it, what does that now mean? And the true answer is that it definitely is like harder, right? It's not, definitely these changes haven't made it easier, and it would be lying to say that it's still the same. It's going to be slightly harder because, one, you remove negative gearing out of the equation, then like at the moment interest rates are quite high, and typically when you first buy a property, it's always going to be somewhat negatively geared, and so holding on to these properties in the short term is going to cost more to hold, right? You're not going to be able to offset that against your income each financial year and claim that back. So holding on to these properties is going to be more expensive to do. Um, and for,
Because of the high interest repayments.
because I guess negative gearing is the difference between your expenses and your income. And at the moment, interest rates, you're looking at 6% plus, if you're lucky, sometimes even higher. And typically, even a good yield on a property, in good areas, like you're looking at 4.5 to 5%. So even just on the interest difference alone, there's already a shortfall. Plus your other expenses in maintaining a property as well that are going to be there, like your property management fees, your council rates, and those things. So
And,
there's definitely a delta
and
that will be there.
right, right. And negative gearing's gone, right? So
Yeah,
therefore
it's
you can't write it off on your tax anymore. So you're having to front more money to keep it to sustain
yeah,
it, and that's why
this
it's more
is
expensive. Is that what you mean?
correct. Yeah, correct. So to sustain it, so those losses are carried forward. So it's like you don't lose them permanently. So eventually, when your property becomes positive in the future, or when you sell the property and you've made a gain, like you can claim that difference back. But the holding costs in the meantime, you still need to pay that money to kind of hold on to those
Cool.
in the
So
meantime.
yeah,
So
it
that's probably the
definitely sounds like they're trying to constrict accessibility of property in some aspects. Is
Yeah,
that
and I think and even if you could afford it, the biggest impact is that it's also then had an impact on people's borrowing capacities as well, because the banks used to factor that in, which means you could borrow more. So people that could have borrowed 800 before can borrow 700 now, and vice versa. Not vice versa, like so 600, 500. Like the borrowing capacity is reducing.
yeah?
Um, Definitely, that's where and I guess this is where the creativity comes in. Like, finding a good broker who can work out solutions for you. There's new products out there where there's like potentially 40-year loan terms or slightly higher rates to get the lending. So even though it might cost you more, but at least you got access to it. And, creative ways to try to keep going. And, there's only so much a broker can do, but within the limits of what they've got, at least it could be the difference between buying into a certain market or not, or buying it all full stop.
Can I play back what I'm understanding just for the layman who's not in property?
Yeah.
So effectively, what's happening right now is the government has said you can't buy property through SMSF anymore. Number one, right? Which basically is creating right, and there's only 45 days left if you want to do it. Which basically means that right now in the short term, there's this huge influx of people trying to get it done before. That's number one. But basically, longer term than 45 days, which is going to happen like that, is well, now you can't access property that way, which was a vehicle that people were going to use. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, you can't claim the tax deduction from negative gearing. So you can negatively gear, you just can't claim the tax deduction, which means that it's harder for you as an individual to upkeep an expensive property. Is that the two main things, Kedge?
Yeah, there's those, and there's one more. So when you buy a property, the changes in there used to be a 50% capital gains discount when you sell a property. So when you sell a property, if you've made 500K profit, 250 is tax free, and you're
Mm,
taxed on the other
yeah,
250K.
yeah,
And now they've changed it. It's super confusing, but like it's based on an indexation method.
yeah,
So so indexation method meaning whatever your property grows at beyond the rate of inflation, you get
yeah.
taxed on.
But
So if
that's only
inflation
for
is
selling, right?
that's
That,
when you
yeah.
eventually sell. Yeah, if you sell or when you sell the property, that as well. So
So sorry,
yeah.
please, you go on.
No, I was going to say there's two things that have happened here. So one, there's just definitely some practical things that have changed. But secondly, the bigger impact in the short term anyway is there's been a bit on sentiment, right? Because a lot of people are just confused because it's quite confusing. Like even me talking about it now, I feel like it's probably raising more questions than answering things. So it's like it's very confusing. People don't know what to do. So there's like a sentiment thing to kind of sit back and just kind of watch. So level of investors have dropped as well. So combination of practical things that are making it harder and sentiment that's probably affecting the market at the moment.
That makes plenty of sense. I think that makes plenty of sense what you just
Yeah.
said. Because
Yeah.
basically it's complicated, so people are like, well, fuck, what do I do? And then it leads to them kind of maybe taking a step back. It makes them feel like it's risky. And it's also harder to access for the negative gearing reason and for the SMSF reason. So, what does this mean for, can I ask Kedge, for two different scenarios?
Yep.
Number one, what does it mean for someone that has not bought a property before and is a first time investor? Like, so surely in their mind, for a first time investor, they're just going, can I still access property? That's probably what they're asking usually.
Yep.
And let's just assume, for argument's sake, they're making $100,000 a year, right?
Yep.
So I reckon that's one demographic that's listening here. They're making approximately 100 to 200
Mm.
grand a year. They haven't bought a property yet, and they're like, can I still access the market? And I'd love for you to answer that. And the second question is, what does it mean for someone? Probably myself is the another major kind of demographic for you, which is someone who's got a couple of properties, wants to keep doing it. Well, so what does it mean in those two different scenarios? Unless there's a smarter question I could
No,
be
that's a
asking.
great question. And a lot of people that we're dealing with at the moment are falling into that first bucket.
Okay, so where we were was on if the main demographic is people who are earning approximately 100K a year and they wanted to buy
Yeah.
property for the first time. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. That's typically where a lot of our clients are, like age 25 to 30. They finally got like a pretty good stable job and now they start to make a bit of money. Now they want to go out and figure out what they can do. And investing in property is, one of the things they've kind of heard about and want to kind of, see how they can do that. Um, and typically, like it's always like reverse engineering from the goal they're trying to achieve. And not everyone's the same, but a lot of people are okay. A lot of our clients live in Sydney. They want to eventually try and buy their home in Sydney one day, um, and this will be a way to kind of get there and to be able to do that to try and build wealth through property, sell down in the future, and try and buy their dream home. So we kind of do like a calculation for them, forecast, capital gains tax calculations, all those things, and roughly the timelines that it looks like. The
Yeah.
reality is, with some of the new changes, like the timelines now have drawn out, right? Because like the borrowing capacity has reduced, because negative gearing has been taken out, the amount you can borrow and then go again and again, the timelines do push out a little bit. But
The timelines
ultimately,
to buy, the timelines to make the first purchase. Is that correct?
sorry, the timeline to reach the ultimate goal,
Okay,
right?
sure. Sure.
Yeah, so they want to ultimately say they
Can I
want to
just
buy
quick-
their dream home in Sydney one day, right?
Mm.
Oh, sorry, ask the question.
So yeah, there's a bit of a lag. I was just going to quickly say, I'm of the opinion for the person that wants to be the first buyer for their first property, that obstacle is so difficult for them. Like, I'm of the opinion, like, because to buy your first property for a lot of people, man, in my from what I've learned, it's an intimidating thing,
Mm.
like to do that. And so I don't know how concerned they are about their long-term thing. I don't know if they have I think their immediate pain is more so just getting that first purchase done, in my
Yeah,
opinion. I don't know.
yeah, and I think you're 100% right. It's just I think a lot of the conversation sometimes is around setting expectations around. We do ask them for their ultimate goals. I want to buy this. I
Mm,
want to have passive income of X. I want to have X amount of equity by X year. And sometimes people underestimate. Sometimes people overestimate. But just in general, the comment I guess I was making, yeah, the timelines have changed a little bit. But you're right. A lot of people don't know. Yeah, they are overwhelmed by how to do it. Um, and I guess once again, for a first home buyer, what we found with a lot of people, and I don't know, not everyone is going to have access to this, but a lot of like, I think I've had like 4 clients in the last two weeks or so in a very similar situation, and they didn't know that they could use their parents' property as like a guarantor to kind of start. So, and I'll explain what that means in a second, but effectively, they didn't need to use any of their own cash, right?
right,
So
right.
they've saved up some money. It's like, to be honest, balances around 70K, 80K, kinds of money. They saved it up, very proud of themselves for kind of saving that kind of money and now want to do something.
Mm,
But just showed them like if your parents were lucky enough to have a home, buy a home, most likely because just naturally because their age, there's probably a lot of equity in that house that they own. You don't actually have to use that. You're not actually taking any of the money from your parents. You're just securing that property against the house that you're buying.
mm.
So they're effectively using that house as the security instead of your cash as security, and so allowing you to kind of buy the property that way.
Yeah, as
And
the guarantor. Yeah.
yeah, as a guarantor, which then allows you to preserve more cash, which will likely allow you to do option two, property two, sooner. And obviously, you kind of explain the risks to the parents to get them involved in the conversation. Relatively low risk, if you're if you're stable, you're paying off your property, and those kinds of things. Once again, not advice, but something to check with your parents if that's the avenue you want to go down. But I guess those kinds of conversations, and then there's certain professions that can do lower deposits, and you can get in with, there's, I guess, with certain brokers that can, I guess, work on non-typical scenarios to try and figure out how to kind of get you in there. So I think the main thing is just starting that conversation because there's probably options out there that you may not realize.
I think that I think for the layman, Kedge, I think the way you just ended that was a really I think that's what people need to hear. It's like, dude, there's okay, here's my simple brain on it.
Yeah.
Who's outside of the property world, I guess. It's like, dude, yes, there is a changing market. Yes, it is more complicated than it was. But start the conversation. Have the conversation with the right people. Like obviously Kedge has a buyer's agency. So have the conversation with the people that you resonate with. There may be options available for you which you don't know and you don't necessarily hear on the news. Is that a fair summary of what we're saying
Yeah,
here?
yeah, fair summary, and not without a plug or anything like that. Like if you just want to have a chat and kind of just figure those things out, definitely happy to kind of share. And
Hmm.
I think on top of
So
that, all the
it tells me it's still possible. That's what I'm hearing, though.
no,
It's still
100%, 100%. And I think the other thing that the people need to hear is there's still options around the country where you can still buy property sub 600, sub 500. Like it's still possible, even the entry price point to buy. There are markets out there that are still primed for growth, and and meet other criteria that are still possible. So sometimes when you're living in Sydney or you're living wherever you are, you think property's so expensive and it's going to be impossible. How am I ever going to get in the game? There
Yeah.
are more affordable options out there in parts of the country where it still makes sense. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's the second part of it to explore. And if anything, with the changes that have happened with the budget, it's made these other locations more desirable. So two things with investors specifically, like places like Sydney, places like Metro Melbourne have become less desirable because the yields there are pretty low, the rental yields, right? So we're talking about earlier, I mentioned yields of 4.5%, etc. Like in Sydney, you're looking at sub 3.5, sub 3%. Melbourne, not too dissimilar. So an investor just can't, even if the property's going to grow and it's going to do well, it's just very hard, very expensive to hold on to that property year on year. It's going to cost you 30, 40K potentially in the current environment to hold on to that property. So investors are looking for higher yielding options in growth markets, so they're shifting their behavior. And on top of that, in the country as a whole, there is a lot more movement into these major regional places because purely on affordability as well. So not only are investors changing their behavior, own occupiers, which is already happening. This has nothing to do with the budget. Like that was already happening and that's continuing to happen. And so you put those two together, there's a lot of other places in the country which have a lot of pressure and markets which are still growing, 10%, 15 plus percent a year, still, you know.
I think that's one of my favorite. Some people I know are watching us for the very first time on this episode, right? And I think that this is one of my most favorite takeaways I've ever heard you say, Kedge. And you've said it. This is a core concept I feel like you teach, which is that, dude, Australia is not one market. There's so many markets within Australia. There is the regional Victoria market. There is the Perth market, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. And so, yes, it may plateau. These implications may mean that the market may plateau in Metro Sydney, in Metro Melbourne, right? Right? But that does it. But that actually, that demand has to go somewhere else, And actually, so if you're looking in the right areas, this is actually going to help your case, not actually take away from it in some ways. That's kind of what I'm.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the reality is that's always been the case, right? So there's always been certain, like you see on the news that the property market's grown by 6%. But that means certain markets have dropped by 10 or 15, certain markets have grown by 20, certain markets have grown by 10, some
Look
have
at
dropped
that.
by 3,
Look at
right?
that, eh?
And but
It's
and
great.
that's the same thing right now. Like overall, you're probably going to see on the news for the next 6 months, maybe even a year, that property market's dropping. But a lot of the properties in Australia are heavily in Sydney, Melbourne, etc. So yeah, you're probably going to see some of these markets pull back, and the headline will be property market has dropped. But there's going to be somewhere that has still grown by 15%. There's going to be somewhere that's still grown by 20% in the last year. So the aim of the game is to try and get into those kinds of locations. And obviously not just for a short ride, you also want to make sure the long-term fundamentals are there. So you're not just getting a 20% hit and then nothing else thereafter. Like you want to make sure that it can still sustain and it's got the fundamentals to keep going. But yeah, that's yeah. So the game hasn't changed really. It's just there's more noise out there. It's confusing, and yeah, like negative gearing is gone. So yeah, your impact and strategy might change a little bit, but the fundamentals of why properties will grow and how to invest, just because the budget got announced, hasn't changed. Right? There's a lack of supply in certain markets. There's certain places that are getting a lot of infrastructure. There's certain places where people are still moving to, like lack of supply. Building new homes is very expensive in certain places. So these fundamentals haven't changed, and in some of these cases have exacerbated it because it's even less supply is going to go into certain locations. Once again, I won't go down that path right now, but yeah. So the fundamentals haven't changed about why property works. It's just a lot more noise out there and a little bit more strategy because of the changes.
Man, I think that's a really magnificent way to sum it up. And I think people will appreciate that. So no, thanks for sharing that, man.
No, and
Um,
yeah, no, that's okay. And just I'll leave one more note that's important. So because now to allow your portfolio to grow, the one biggest change that you want to be able to look for in what you're buying for a property is try and find things with value add potential or rental add potential, right? because this is how, because for example, you might get stuck with your normal income at, like, let's say 4 properties, right? But in the past, people will grow their portfolio as much as possible, and then at the end of their journey, might look at doing granny flat or whatever on the properties they have. Now it might change slightly. You might go buy a property that has the potential to subdivide or add a granny flat too, but you're now stuck. You can't really go anymore. So you might go do that granny flat sooner in the journey or do that subdivision sooner in the journey. So you do that, and then that's going to give you more rental income on that property now. So that will then allow you to keep going down the line. So just the order in which you do things may change, and the type of properties you might look for would change a little bit as well. So
I love it, man. And you know the way I see it, man, and hopefully this is empowering for people listening. It to me, it's like yes, it might sound a bit complicated, and yes, it might be conflicting, or whatever, changing information and noise, and it requires a level of discernment and confidence and risk tolerance and belief that you're going to figure it out. Yes, I know it requires a bunch of that stuff and a bunch of learning. I know that, but it but you're going to make hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from this stuff. So yeah, there's a little bit of a cost involved, and to me, the cost is this stuff. The
yeah,
cost is learning about this stuff and recognizing that there are moving things, but but if you just look at one side of the coin, you're just going to talk yourself out. Like, but it's pretty hard to just pretty easily get hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars just out of nowhere, right? Like you're going to have to pay for it somehow, and this is how we're paying for it, and that's okay in my mind. Kej, you're going to say something on that,
yeah, no,
or
that's exactly right. And I think it's like, I think the number one question, I guess, with these changes, some people are like, oh, it's too hard now, and they just think, but it's just like, what is the genuine alternative? And I'm sure there's alternatives out there. It's like, I'm obviously going to have a natural bias towards it because I understand it. I understand how it works, and I know how to make it work for me and people I work with. And some people may not have the level of detail, but what is the alternative, and how else are you going to do it if you're not going to do this? And there could be things, but at least go and do that. Don't just throw your hands in the air and, I guess, do
yeah.
nothing. Yeah.
And yeah. By the way, I'm cognizant we've got less than half an hour left. I
Yeah.
did want to make sure, because I'm pretty sure at the beginning of the episode we spoke about also some lessons learned from turning 35. Can I just quickly say on the property thing though? Um,
Yeah.
uh, please, can you guide me a little bit on this, Kedge, or help me understand this better than my rudimentary understanding? The other thing with property is presumably it's like the value of your debt now, like let's say your debt is $500,000, in 10 years' time, $500,000 is not going to be to mean as much. I don't know how, I'm not going to pretend I know a great deal about macroeconomics,
Yeah.
or hyperinflation or all that stuff,
Yeah.
but, but in general, for sure, $500,000 in 10 years is going to feel like less than it feels
Yeah,
now.
of course.
Could
The
you
same,
speak to
like,
that?
same way $1 is worth a lot less than what $1 was worth, 10 years ago. As in, I remember when I was in high school and I could buy a pork and rice for $3, at the Vietnamese shop down the road. Like, and now that would probably cost $10. So
Yes,
like the
yes.
value of the dollar over time with inflation reduces. So same way with debt, like the impact of $500,000 today, what it is in 10 years time would not, is not going to feel like the same because, and yeah, your incomes and everything will go up as well. And with inflation, where those dollar goes a lot further. So
So to me, man, I again, please, I feel like I'm saying some basic stuff, and maybe you can inform it.
yeah,
But to me, it's like that's why property to me sincerely feels like a no-brainer. And furthermore, it's I mean that's I feel like why I've done so well with it personally, because it's like sure, you get yourself into $1 million of debt, but $1 million feels like less with number one, inflation, which is basically time. Furthermore, with the more that you earn, $1 million feels like less. But then also, what happens because of the inflation is those properties, like you can't buy, a property for 400 grand anymore. You like the properties that used to be 400 grand are $1 million now. like, so the cost
Yeah.
of goods is higher, right?
Yeah.
So there's like the odds are in your favor. I mean, the odds are going your way macroeconomically. It is my rudimentary piece on it.
No, no, 100%. And I think someone listening might say, "Oh yeah, but yeah, that also applies to the upside, right?" So if your property makes 500,000, like that's 500,000 in today's cash, it's not going to feel like 500,000 in the that's but
Mm,
and that's true. You can't dismiss. We're getting the benefit on the down. You're saying the loans are going to be worth less, but yeah, the upside is quote unquote worth less,
yeah,
than in
I
today's
like
value
that. Yeah,
too.
I like that. Yeah,
But like having said that, at least so even the way the capital gains calculation is worked out is you're only paying tax on what's greater than inflation, right? So you're just at least if even if your property kept up with inflation, you're at least keeping up with that inflation as opposed to nothing. Otherwise you're keeping in the bank and you're actually going backwards. But
precisely.
the reality is you're going to be outpacing that inflation too. So if inflation is 3% a year, the average property grows 6% a year. So you're already doubling, you're ahead of inflation by effective double just by doing average. And if you
Yeah,
can do better than average, then you're well ahead of that. So
yeah, I like it. And for
yeah,
people listening, because I didn't really know what inflation was, but I feel like a nice, easy way to understand it is it's like the erosion of your money. Like, a dollar, as Kedge was saying, like, back when we were in school, you could buy like a meat pie for $2 or something, right? And
yeah.
then now it's like $8. So that's inflation. So it's the erosion of your currency. So at least you are staying on par, if not beating inflation. So anyway, before we run out of time, shall we change to speaking about life lessons
We
with
could, yeah, as in, yeah, I didn't have much time to think about it. You texted me earlier today and just said
yeah, sorry
three
about
life
that.
lessons because it's his birthday. So I did give it some very quick thought, but was busy with the day, so not too much. But there's a few things that came natural to me. Um, so I just thought I would just start talking about it, and then we can just kind of
For sure.
riff off the back of it. Um, One that came to me was, yeah, so just like two ways to look at it. So I guess the word's gratitude, but it's like the gratitude is like your unlock because you're already kind of you've already won, like as in you've already won, and you're kind of just like, I guess if you're using like gambling, you're playing with house money now, right? And I think, but the biggest thief of that, so there's two ways to look at it. The biggest thief of that is comparison, right? And so you've heard that saying, comparison is a thief of joy. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that robs us of that, right? Because we're seeing other people in all areas of life, whether it's the people with the same industry as us, you're probably looking at other coaches and seeing what they're doing. You're probably looking at people looking at other people's relationships. And relationships are a bit hard, but then you're looking at somebody else and being like, oh, they've got it all figured out. Someone's fitter than you, health, so all these kinds of things. So,
I
and
like
the
it.
reality is like, and man, both of us can say this. We've both had pretty relatively hard upbringings, and life hasn't been easy, and all those kinds of things. But there's still so much to be grateful for, and so much good that's happened. And I think if we can kind of be happy with that, and then now we're kind of building life on our terms. And as much as people are similar, we're all very unique, right? We're all very unique, and we've got our own little values. We've got the right kinds of different kinds of friends that make sense for us, different kind of tribes that make sense for us, the right type of profession that makes sense for us. And I think it's just, yeah, a lot of that for me has come from doing a lot of inner work to help figure that out and then go execute that in the real world. But yeah, that's the please, yeah, ask questions. But that's yeah, in the one way, yeah, gratitude is the unlock, and comparison is the thief of joy. So
I'd I'd love to ask a hard question on that
yeah, yeah, go for it.
because I'm confident that there's people like because once you get it, you get it, you know.
Sure.
But I'm confident that there's people listening to this going, bro, I fucking hear that useless platitude shit of like gratitude all the time. I don't get it. How does gratitude help me make money? I know how to answer that question, but Tej, I'd love to hear from you. Like like people. I feel like a lot of people. I like when you know, right? But I feel like a lot of people don't understand why gratitude actually helps.
Yeah, and I get that, man, because I think I was there. I've been there as well, so I appreciate that.
Mhm.
And yeah, you're right. When you know, and it's like when you're struggling and you can't crack your business or you're doing this, and you're like, bro, what's great? It doesn't feel that way, but it's like, it's really hard. And you know what? I'm not gonna have a straight answer to this. 'Cause I don't really know. I think it's just like, I think this is gonna link to one of the other things that I'm gonna say.
Okay. Yeah.
So I might even just say that and then come back to
Okay.
it, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like, so learn to learn. So like, because you want to grow, so be passionate about
Wow.
learning.
Learn to
But
learn. That
the
one.
caveat to that is also, but go and get real life experience. Yeah, because I've been in a place in the past, but I actually used to love to learn, but I wasn't actually executing any of it, right? So I just sit there, just binging content, learning shit. But then you actually need to go and apply that in the real world, make mistakes, get it wrong. And I'll bring it back to the gratitude piece now, now that I've said that. It's like,
Mm.
because yeah, in theory, we're talking about it, if you're grateful for things, if you're going to operate from a better place. And I think in theory, that makes sense. But then you got to go, I guess, go and actually try to do it and actually try and be, focus that energy and be great, actually spend time actually being grateful for those things and seeing if that actually causes a shift in you or not. And then as time goes on, you start to figure out the things that actually matter to you more and what matters to you less. And then, yeah, I think it kind of all kind of works together. It's sometimes hard to talk about in isolation because I can sit there and be like, oh, yeah, I'm grateful. I know people that, my parents had it harder and people 100 years ago had it harder, and, and this other person had it harder, and so I should be grateful. But I think, and it's just probably true. And it's hard to kind of get yourself into that space.
That's a
But I
yeah.
think it's like, yeah, you got to go actually just live it and experience it, do it, and it's yeah, and then that's how because there's no theoretically, I think it makes sense.
Can I ask you, just for
Yeah,
context sake, what was the third one? Was there a third one, or
yeah,
was
yeah.
was
Third
it?
one, so I wrote it down.
Okay.
So, it's just like it's pretty much, yeah, you can do anything that you want, right? But you can't do everything, right? So prioritize and live in line with your values. And for me, that links to me with like energy management as well. Because I think that was a big lesson for me because I was like expending too much energy on certain things and feeling burnt out, and that was happening. So I knew if I really wanted to, I can do anything that I want, right? But I can't do everything. And when I was going to try and do everything, as much as I felt like I could, like I learned that I couldn't. So then trying to live in order of that, and I'm still probably pushing the boundaries in terms of that, and doing that, but at least to a certain degree, I've got a bit of prioritization on what's important, and by doing it in that order, overall, I feel like I've got more energy to give. So those are the three.
I really love that you ended with that, man, that you've got more energy to give if you how would you say that third lesson again?
I think prioritize it in the right order. So I think
Yeah.
that, yeah,
Yeah.
prioritize and do those things in order of values, and also kind of accept what you can't do. Like in this, even and not always
Just it.
permanent, not
Yeah,
always
yeah.
permanently, but even for this season, like sometimes, and this might go against certain things, and it might be wrong. But at certain seasons, you know what, I actually can't. For the next 2 months, I'm probably not even going to go. I'm not going to get to the gym. I'm just going to struggle, but I want to look after my health in these ways and X, Y, Z. But for a different person, it might be different, right? By going to the gym, it's actually going to give them more energy, so then they can go do more, right? So I think it's figuring out what that is for you and deleting certain things and just prioritizing that energy into what you can do, and hopefully that gives you enough energy to do all the things that you need to do.
Man, I think that that is magnificent. I would love to speak to those 3 points,
Yeah,
unless you want to
please.
say something else, man.
No, no, that's it. So please, now I'll be guided by your questions, and I'll try my best to answer.
Man, well, can I share my reflections on those 3 points, and then maybe you can share yours?
Yeah.
Ironically, so I was writing them down while you were saying it. Uh, so your first one was gratitude and comparison is the thief of joy. That's kind of like one.
Yeah.
Number two was learn to learn, but then apply it in real life. And then number three was prioritize, or like you can do everything, but you can't do you can do everything, but you can't do everything all at once, or you can do anything, but you can't do everything.
Yeah,
It's
pretty
all
much. Yeah.
right. Ironically, when I was writing down your first two, The third one that I wrote, Kedge, was be real, which ironically to me was very similar to how you explained uh, you can do you can do anything, but you can't do everything.
Yeah.
And for me, that's actually about being real, about
Mm.
what you can actually realistically do, and not being delusional. And dude, I know speaking about being delusional, people like roll their eyes, like, and they think that's not them. But ironically, like literally just today, dude, I was coaching someone at 10 a.m. this morning, and this guy's making more money and has a better business than he has the type of business and life and physique and relationships that most people dream of. And he was still falling into the trap of being delusional about his capabilities,
Mm.
and as a result, screwing up his business and his
Mm.
relationships and his business partnerships in the present, and his
Mm.
mental health in the
Yeah.
present. So none of us are above shifting into being delusional. I would say point number one on gratitude and comparison. Kedge to me, and this is I'm just giving a bit of a teaching point so people can apply this in real life, if I may. Uh, Kedge said the magic word to me, which is energy. To me, like okay, like if you're listening and you've heard this thing about gratitude, and you're like, okay, I heard people talking about gratitude, but it just sounds self-righteous, and it sounds like a platitude, and it sounds like virtue signaling. Like, what how does it actually help me? I'll say a couple of things. Hopefully then you will get it if you're listening. Number one, gratitude. Okay, at a baseline, it makes you feel happy and makes you feel fulfilled, right? Now I know that answer is not enough for a lot of people because they're like, I don't care about that. I just want the money. I don't need the happiness and gratitude. I don't need the happiness and fulfillment that bad. For some people, I get it. So the point number two, why gratitude is important, if you don't care about happiness and you don't care about fulfillment that much, is gratitude gives you, it changes your energy in that it makes you more pleasant to be around, and it helps you sustain yourself so you don't burn out, because it gives you a sense of calm, a sense of letting go, a sense of ease, a sense of which all lead to replenishment and rejuvenation of the soul, which help you feel better, more joyful, and more energetic, which in turn helps you operate more clearly, more creatively, and helps you sell better, and helps you be a joy to the people that you're around, which for sure correlates to more money, especially if you are in sales or in entrepreneurship. Because ultimately, whether people know it or not, a big part of what they're buying is your energy and your vibe, and whether they feel like they know, like, and trust you. You know, because you may have some of the best shit in the world, but if you are a fucking mission to be around and people don't want to be around you because your energy sucks, then it's a hard sell, right? So being so if you because I literally was speaking about this, I believe, on episode number 8, maybe, about the comparison thing, because I caught myself definitely comparing myself to certain friends of mine. So I'm not above this. I'm not trying to lecture as if I'm also on the journey. But for me, it was like uh, I realized, okay, why can't I be grateful? Why can't I feel a sense of energy or fulfillment or joy at the thought of making $500,000 a year, say, right? And when I was being self-honest, which was another principle I wrote down, being real, it's like, okay, because the minute I get to that, I'll be like, oh, but that's not 1 million. And the minute I get to that, but I'm like, oh, but my friend makes 1 million a month. And then the minute I get to that, oh, but my other friend makes 10 million a month, or he more actually. So then I realized, okay, so then why am I doing this strategy? Why am I doing the strategy of comparing myself? Why am I doing the strategy of not being grateful about where I'm at? Two things. Number one, and Kedge may want to speak on this. I know I'm going on a little bit of a spiel here, Kedge. I hope this is okay. So number one, it's because I didn't want to slow down. I was like afraid that if I stopped to smell the roses or appreciate where I was at, it would cause me to slow down. That was one of my limiting beliefs about gratitude, number one. Number two was because I think that was the main one. I just didn't want to slow down. So, and I just thought that I have to stay focused on getting this money. And then also if I was grateful, I might get cocky and get carried away and then also lose track. But what I came to realize was by ignoring being grateful and comparing myself and, going, oh, this is not good enough. I need to be here. This is not good enough. It burnt me out, man, in the end. It burnt me out. It made me tired. It made me bitter. I didn't want to be around myself. Um, it just made me like this kind of bitter version of me. And then I just asked myself the self-honest question, well, is this going to help me make money, like in the long term? Is this sustainable? Is this going to help me sell? Is this going to help me fucking produce or build assets or be creative or come good on camera? No, it was not. So I'm like, this strategy does not work. So then I thought again about these foundational principles like gratitude and not comparing yourself, but actually putting your attention and just being real about where you actually are in this current moment, present moment. And I came to realize, you know what, man, if I can just accept myself for where I'm actually at and actually have the humility to celebrate how actually fucking dope it is for how far I've come, and allow myself to go, you know what, man, I actually have come pretty far. And with humility, let me just acknowledge that for a second. It's pretty dope, actually. It's pretty cool. And actually I'm really grateful for what I have. Dude, I just felt better. I felt more easeful. It's like a release valve that just got and with that, I found energy and fun and joy again, which like fun, joy equals energy equals money. So it was like a self-fulfilling like upward spiral that came when I actually and where is the best place to put your power if not in the present moment? Because if you put your full power and presence and acknowledgement into the present moment, it allows you to give your best into the present moment, which allows you to create the best possible future. So to me, being grateful, it also requires humility. It requires courage to actually look at yourself in the mirror and look at where you're currently at and go, wow, I do have shortcomings. There are issues here, but I'm also grateful for it. Requires humility and self-honesty, but actually then you're seeing your actual current situation for what it is. And that takes courage. But then if you can do that, then you can actually operate to your full capacity and with the most mastery and skill and finesse and prowess into the present moment, which is the highest probability of making your future better. So to me, that is why gratitude is actually it's so much further deeper than a little Instagram post, you know? Well, yeah, Kesha, I know there was a
No,
little
that
rant.
was no, said so artfully well. And for me, if I was just like the way I understand it, and if I was going to say it very simply, is just like I think if you can get to that place, they saying where you are grateful for where you are right now, the rest of you're doing everything else that you're doing from a more joyful place, as well. So when you're going out and whatever, building this or relationship this or whatever, like you're already happy, you're already satisfied, you're satiated. So you're doing it from that place. So which is gonna be give you the highest probability of success rather than doing it from a place of push and anger and frustration and whatever, whatever else that could be the driving force behind that.
Maybe because if you're doing it from that place, it probably gonna is probably gonna lead you to make better products,
Yeah.
like think better about the customer, is using your full brain.
Yeah.
So the output is better, which
Yeah.
means that there's better money.
Yeah.
So, bro, I'm cognizant of time.
Yeah.
Um, can I quickly say something about the learn to learn one that you were saying
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah, and I'd love to, yeah, learn to learn, but we would
Please.
like to the key part is the experience part because I think, like, say what you're going to say because I'm, yeah, that's probably the only thing because I think, like I said, the learn to learn part without the experience, for me, is useless. Not useless, but yeah, pretty much
Bro,
useless. Yeah.
bro, amen, man, amen.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people get caught up in effectively it ends up becoming analysis paralysis,
Yeah.
where they're kicking the can down the road, and they are feeling productive and getting the dopamine hits of thinking that they're learning a bunch of shit and building, but they're not applying it into real life. So this is why I'm very passionate, even for like the boys that I coach. I don't really give a fuck about all the stuff that you said that you built. I don't, because you want to get the feedback from the market, not from your mind,
Mm.
because everyone wants to build, and it's fun and learn and all this shit. Build your knowledge, build this, build that. But that is not wisdom. That's
Mm.
information and that's
Mm.
knowledge. But wisdom is the synthesis of real life experience plus knowledge tested, and that's where you get the nuanced embodiment that comes. And that's a different paradigm. So
Mm.
I'm actually fiercely passionate about this. Where I learned this, by the way, Kedge, was uh when I was 21, I went to Vipassana, which is the 10-day silent meditation camp. And so what he does is he gets you to meditate for the full day, from like, you wake up at 4:30 in the morning and you meditate, it's a full day meditation until like 9:30 p.m. But around 8:30 p.m. they do a discourse, and what he says is, with every day of new experience that you have in meditation and depth that you create, then I will give you the next layer of knowledge that comes with it. And then that's how you get the true integration, which is the wisdom. Otherwise, it's just knowledge without context. So the experience gives you the context. That's what I would say on that one, man.
Yeah, no, and but echo the same. I think in just in real life, just going as in all the stuff with values and all the things that we speak about. But I think unless you go out and post that video or go get some experience in that field or see what it's actually really like, I want to start this business. Go do something, and then you start getting the feedback. And because theoretically things sound great, but you don't realize the drawbacks that come with doing that. It's not all fun and roses, but you probably don't realize the joy in some of those things that come with it. So unless you actually go and do it in some capacity or give it a crack or whatever, then you're not going to get that feedback to then apply that, learn and adjust and keep going. So pretty much what you just said then, but
And to
you got to
me,
do it.
it would, yeah, and to me, a big reason that people are not doing it is because they're not being real, which to me was
Mm,
that principle number three, which is because they're,
nice.
they're afraid. They're afraid. They're afraid that they can try and fail. They're afraid what people might think. They're afraid that can get rejected. So
Mm,
it's just like, dude, be real. It's actually, you're not building because you want to build for the sake of building. You're building as a cope because you're afraid of actually putting yourself out there. So just be
yeah.
real, and you'll get more wisdom that way. So, kids, it's fine.
Yeah, no, it's that same. And it's that even that, because it can be scary, but even that analogy that exists is like, oh, people that build a business, they've had three or four that have failed before, they have a successful one. But it's like, and that doesn't have to happen, but it's like that you're learning, you're getting real life experience, you're figuring stuff out, and then you eventually and then they go and build one that's successful. But you need to kind of go through that journey. It might be the same business. You might fail at the one business and you're figuring stuff out, you're getting it wrong, but you need to kind of do that to get there. And I think what I see with a lot of people is firstly, people love to talk about, I'm going to do this one day, I'm going to build this, I'm going to do that, and sit around in a circle at a birthday party or wherever and talk about the stuff and not actually do it. But then there's people that sit there and just like plan it, plan, and never actually start. So I think the encouragement from this is like, just, yeah, go out and just have a crack, because like, and even if it's like a side hustle while you're doing your main thing or whatever, that's the only way you're going to get feedback to know if this is the right path for you. So,
It's beautifully said, man.
yeah.
And I think we're pretty much directly at time, if not just a bit over. So this was episode 15. I really hope that people got a lot of value out of it. Um, I think it was a very valuable episode. Kedge, is there any final notes that you want to say before we finish today?
No, not at all, man. I think like we, yeah, I will round out. Yeah, I think the main thing is like everyone, like we're talking about my life lessons, but everyone's journey is extremely unique. And so it's not about just taking this and just going do it, but just at least just go and think about it and think about how it might make sense for your life and how you can apply it. Because I'm not here to copy Dim or anyone else, and likewise, whoever's listening, not here to necessarily copy us. You might take some wisdom from what we're saying and think about how to then practically apply that into your real life.
Beautifully said. I think that's very much in the creed of Namaste Rich and the spirit of this, which is finding richness in every area of life. And I think that creates a good life. So, all right, love you, bro. Great to see you as always. Episode
Likewise.
15. Yeah, next week, man, I'm going to be at the retreat. So we'll have to coordinate whether we're going to do an episode next week or not.
Yeah.
Hopefully we will. If not, we'll do a debriefing after the retreat. For everyone watching, I run men's retreats. So, all good. Finish the episode, and everyone will see you next time.
See you next time.